Okay, at this point we've taken the neck back off the guitar once we have it in plane. And what we want to do is fit the truss rod. Now you notice that the truss rod has a piece of tape on the back side. That has to stay on. And then you'll notice there's a flat side. And then there's an adjustment wrench that goes in here, and that has to be accessed from the top side of the neck. So just make sure that that's top side up. Okay, you'll notice at this point it doesn't fit, it's too tight. So all we're going to do is just take a rasp with a coarse side, and if you get your thumb right behind where you want to work, then at this point run this back and forth a few times on the coarse side. Probably won't take that much for that truss rod to slip in. At this point, less is more. Don't take off too much. You should not have to jam the truss rod in, but it should not fall in either. Okay, this is actually fitting in pretty nicely. Now, we took a fair amount of material off the thickness of the neck, and at this point the height of the truss rod is now higher than the neck. At this point we want to put the wrench in, and again, don't pry on the end of the headstock. Really push that in and just push on the front side of the neck, and that'll pop right out. So at this point I need to do a little bit of work to deepen that up, and the way I'll do that is very simply with a chisel, and diagonally I'll basically scrape that bottom. I'll scrape this a few times. Okay, so at this point we've taken the file, taken some chisels, some sandpaper, and actually a nice little tip. If you take a thin block of wood, take a little bit of that sticky back paper, stick it on the end, works nicely to really sand the bottom of that if you need to go a little deeper. Okay, so at this point we've fit the truss rod. It fits very nicely. Just make sure that the truss rod is flush or slightly below the height of the neck, which in this case, it's all good. So now we're getting very close to sanding or to gluing the fingerboard. So what we will do is take a piece of blue tape and put this over the truss rod, like so. And then if you simply can run a chisel or a knife right down both sides of the truss rod, and then we want to leave the piece of blue tape stuck to the top of the truss rod. And the reason we do that, so that we don't get a lot of glue, or really any glue, on the top of the truss rod. That really needs to be free. The last tip is to go ahead and just sand the back of this, not to reshape, but really just to take any of the machine marks out. We'll take a little bit of acetone, hit the backside with acetone, and that's really just used to remove any of the natural oils of the rosewood. Okay, once that's dry, and it'll only take maybe a minute or two, then you can put that glue on for the final time. Glue her up. Okay, at this point we're getting real close to being ready to glue the fingerboard. First question is, where do you glue the fingerboard? Well, what we're trying to do is take the nut and have it lay flat on the neck itself, and try and position this in such a way that you can hide the seam between the headstock veneer and the top of the neck. If we place this on here, if you place it too far forward, you may be able to see this if I hold this just like so. You'll notice here that now it's tipping off, so it's sitting on the headstock, it's not sitting on the neck. So really just get that to sit nice and flat, again hiding that seam. And once you have it hiding the seam, you're ready to go ahead and mark that. I'll just put a pencil mark. The other thing that a lot of folks will do is just go right ahead, get back to that line, and put a piece of tape right across there. That way there, you won't get any additional glue on there, and if you do, you can peel it right off. So that's now your glue line, right where the fingerboard will sit. And you can use your fingers as a gauge to center it on the neck. Okay, let's look. I also put a piece of tape down the center on the top of the truss rod. That's actually going to come out before we actually place the fingerboard on for the final time. It's just there to prevent glue sitting on the top of that truss rod. That truss rod needs to move free. Remember that you have a tremendous amount of pressure being applied to the neck in this direction with string tension. So in order to counter that, you have the adjustment wrench that'll go in and tighten that truss rod up and counter that tension being applied by the strings. Okay, so that needs to operate freely. So that's why we tape it initially, just to prevent glue in that area.